Snowflakes fell silently outside her window, each one gentle yet heavy with memories she wished she could forget. Hannah sat quietly, staring into the fire, the distant echoes of past battles flickering in her eyes. She never imagined a simple knock on her door would soon bring a companion whose loyalty would change her forever. As you listen to Hannah's journey tonight, perhaps you're curled up in a cozy corner of your own, somewhere far from Montana's endless snow. I'd love to hear where you're joining us from. Share it below in the comments, and let's all feel a little closer tonight. The wind roared fiercely, battering the small wooden cabin tucked away in the vast, snowy expanses of rural Montana. Hannah Davis, a former Air Force officer, sat by the fireplace, her dark hair pulled into a loose bun, revealing a slender face etched with invisible scars deeper than those on her pale skin. Her tired blue eyes gazed blankly into the dancing flames, seeing images no one else could, memories of skies filled with fire, friends lost too soon, and nights that never ended peacefully. Each evening brought shadows that whispered painful truths, and tonight was no different, except for the intensity of the storm raging outside. Suddenly, amidst the howling winds, Hannah heard something faint yet desperate, a cry muffled by nature's fury. Curious yet cautious, she rose from her chair, wrapping a thick woolen coat around her slender frame, and stepped outside into the swirling snow. In the pale glow of the porch light, she spotted the source of the distress. Lying motionless, partially buried beneath freshly fallen snow, was a German Shepherd. The dog, barely 2 years old by her estimation, had thick fur streaked with black and tan, now matted with ice and blood. His brown eyes, filled with exhaustion and fear, met Hannah's gaze with a vulnerability that resonated deep within her. "Oh, you poor thing," Hannah whispered, kneeling gently beside him. His breathing was shallow and rapid, punctuated by occasional whimpers. As she carefully brushed the snow from his body, she uncovered deep lacerations along his side, fresh wounds that spoke of a desperate struggle for survival. Her heart clenched at the thought of abandoning him. She knew all too well what it felt like to be alone, wounded, and forgotten. Without hesitation, Hannah lifted him into her arms, ignoring the biting cold that seeped through her clothing. The dog's body trembled, yet despite his pain, he didn't resist. Instead, he nestled his head weakly against her shoulder, as though sensing she was his only hope. Inside the cabin, Hannah moved swiftly but tenderly, laying him down beside the warm fireplace. She fetched clean towels, antiseptics, and bandages from her well-stocked first aid kit, remnants of her military training. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, carefully cleaning the wounds while whispering reassuringly to the frightened creature. "You're safe now," she soothed softly. "I promise I'll take care of you." The German Shepherd's eyes watched her movements warily at first, but as she gently applied the soothing ointment to his wounds, his gaze softened. Trust blossomed slowly between them, born of necessity and compassion. Once bandaged, he lay quietly on the makeshift bed of blankets Hannah prepared, exhaustion finally overtaking fear as his breathing steadied. Throughout the night, Hannah sat vigilantly beside him, occasionally reaching out to stroke his soft ears, comforting herself as much as the dog. The warmth of his body and the rhythm of his breathing gradually eased the ache of loneliness that had consumed her since leaving the Air Force. Her mind drifted to the days when she wore her uniform proudly, soaring above the clouds, feeling purposeful and strong. Now, grounded and burdened by invisible wounds, she wondered if perhaps this injured dog was not just a creature in need, but a sign of something greater, an opportunity for both of them to heal together. As dawn broke over the snow-covered landscape, bathing the cabin in pale golden light, the German Shepherd stirred, lifting his head weakly to meet Hannah's tender gaze. A faint wag of his tail conveyed more gratitude than words ever could. "I think I'll call you Ranger," Hannah murmured gently, running her fingers through his thick fur. "It's a strong name, fit for a survivor." And though she initially thought she would only care for him until his wounds healed, Hannah found herself inexplicably attached to the brave dog who had found his way through the storm into her life. Deep down, she knew their paths had crossed for a reason, far beyond mere coincidence. Together, in that quiet cabin beneath Montana's endless sky, two wounded souls began their slow journey back toward hope. Days turned into weeks, and with Hannah's meticulous care, Ranger steadily regained his strength. His wounds closed, fur grew soft and glossy once more, and the frightened look in his eyes gave way to cautious affection. Ranger was now a robust young German shepherd, around 2 years old, with deep brown eyes that watched Hannah's every move and ears that perked attentively at even the softest sounds. His gentle nature was evident, yet beneath it lay an urgency Hannah couldn't quite comprehend. Each morning, as Hannah stood at the kitchen window, sipping coffee, she observed Ranger pacing restlessly by the back door, ears alert, eyes fixed intently toward the dense forest behind her property. Initially, Hannah had dismissed this behavior as mere curiosity, but as days passed, it became evident Ranger was desperately trying to communicate something. One chilly afternoon, Hannah stepped outside to gather firewood. Ranger immediately bounded to her side, nudging her gently but insistently toward the edge of the forest. "What is it, boy?" she asked softly, her fingers tracing his thick, warm coat. He whimpered softly, pawing the ground impatiently, his gaze unwaveringly fixed on something invisible in the distance. Hannah's heart stirred uneasily. She recognized that kind of urgency. It reminded her of missions where intuition had meant the difference between life and death. She hesitated, feeling the familiar tug of anxiety twist in her chest. Ever since returning from overseas, Hannah had deliberately isolated herself, burying painful memories beneath silence and solitude. She feared that following Ranger into the unknown might reopen wounds she had fought so hard to close. Yet as she watched the German shepherd's unwavering determination, she realized that turning away would betray something more profound, an emerging trust that had begun healing her broken spirit. "All right, Ranger," Hannah finally conceded, adjusting her scarf against the bitter wind. "Show me what's out there." As if understanding her words perfectly, Ranger wagged his tail and trotted forward, occasionally glancing back to ensure Hannah was following. They ventured deeper into the snow-covered trees, the air heavy with quiet anticipation. The stillness around her was comforting yet unsettling, echoing her internal struggle to face the unknown. After nearly 20 minutes of cautious walking, Ranger suddenly stopped, his stance alert, gaze fixed intently ahead. Through the frost-laden branches, Hannah saw what had captured his attention, an old, abandoned farmhouse, standing silently amidst the trees. Its wooden walls were weathered gray, windows shattered or missing, and the front porch sagged under years of neglect. A chill ran down her spine, the scene eerily reminiscent of places she'd encountered in darker times. Ranger stepped closer, nose sniffing cautiously, his body tense yet determined. Hannah hesitated again, heart racing as familiar anxiety surged within her. "Why here, Ranger?" she whispered, more to herself than the dog. Her pulse quickened as she grappled with the conflicting desire to retreat and the compelling curiosity of the mystery before her. Yet, amidst that uncertainty, Ranger turned toward Hannah, meeting her eyes with an unwavering gaze full of trust and quiet reassurance. His steady presence spoke louder than words, silently promising he wouldn't let her face this alone. For a moment, she saw herself reflected in Ranger's earnest expression, brave yet vulnerable, determined yet unsure. Taking a slow, calming breath, Hannah cautiously approached the farmhouse with Ranger by her side. Her hand brushed softly against his fur, drawing strength from his calm courage. The bond they'd formed in recent weeks, fragile yet powerful, now felt undeniably real. This connection had begun to mend parts of Hannah she'd long considered beyond repair. Stopping at the porch steps, Ranger paused, looking up expectantly. Hannah knelt down, gently stroking his head as her heartbeat steadied. "All right, Ranger," she murmured, voice trembling slightly with emotion. "You've brought me this far. Now let's see what this place is hiding." Together, they ascended the creaking steps, stepping closer to the shadowy doorway, unaware that beyond it lay secrets capable of changing both their lives forever. Stepping cautiously into the shadowy interior of the old farmhouse, Hannah's eyes gradually adjusted to the dim light filtering through cracked, dusty windows. Ranger remained by her side, his sturdy body tense but reassuringly close, his dark ears perked forward as if attuned to every silent whisper within the walls. The air was heavy with the scent of dust, dampness, and something distinctly human, a lingering presence that made Hannah's pulse quicken with unease. She carefully moved deeper into the home, following faint signs of recent habitation, a worn armchair covered with a faded blanket, scattered papers on a rickety table, and an unwashed coffee cup sitting abandoned beside a small wood stove. Ranger sniffed cautiously at the items, his curiosity tinged with urgency, nudging Hannah gently toward a small room at the back of the house. Hannah pushed the door open slowly, the old hinges creaking softly. Her breath caught sharply in her throat at the sight before her. Lying quietly on a narrow bed, partially covered by thin blankets, was an elderly man. He appeared frail and thin, with wisps of silver hair framing a deeply lined, weathered face. His breathing was shallow and uneven, each intake of air sounding like a soft struggle against unseen pain. Hannah recognized immediately the signs of neglect and illness that gripped him tightly, his cheeks hollowed, his skin pale and translucent. The man's eyes fluttered open weakly, and with a startled gaze, he tried to sit up but lacked the strength. Who are you?" he rasped faintly, his voice cracked and uncertain. "My name's Hannah," she answered gently, stepping closer, her heart tightening at the vulnerability in his expression. "I live nearby, and my dog Ranger led me here. Are you all right? Do you need help?" A faint smile tugged at the corners of the old man's lips at the mention of Ranger. He weakly extended a trembling hand toward the German shepherd, who approached carefully and nudged it gently with his nose. The man's expression softened further as tears gathered at the edges of his weary gray eyes. "Good boy," he murmured faintly. "I knew you'd find someone." Moved by the tenderness of their interaction, Hannah quickly assessed his condition, recognizing the familiar signs of dehydration, malnutrition, and illness. She knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand softly upon his fragile shoulder. "Please tell me your name, sir." Arthur Thompson," he whispered quietly, exhaustion evident in every syllable. "I served in Vietnam long ago. Seems the world forgot about me after that. Been alone here ever since." The deep sorrow etched into his face echoed in Hannah's heart, mirroring her own hidden loneliness and bringing an ache to the surface she had long tried to suppress. "You're not alone anymore, Arthur," she reassured him firmly, determined to provide him the dignity and care he had been unjustly denied. "I promise I'll help you." Hannah rose quickly, retrieving water and food from her backpack, assisting Arthur carefully as he took small, grateful sips, watching his frail strength return ever so slightly. As the room began to brighten with the warmth of shared compassion, Arthur spoke softly, revealing fragments of a life shaped by honor and sacrifice, pain and solitude. Hannah listened intently, recognizing the parallels between Arthur's experiences and her own unspoken struggles after leaving the military. She realized that Ranger had sensed something vital. This forgotten soldier, isolated and abandoned, had needed someone to find him, just as much as she herself had needed to reconnect with the world. Through it all, Ranger stayed beside Arthur's bed, providing gentle comfort, his steadfast presence reassuring both humans that no one was truly forgotten if someone cared enough to reach out. Hannah understood, deep within her soul, the purpose Ranger had brought into her life. This brave, intuitive dog had helped her rediscover empathy, courage, and a desire to heal not only herself but others suffering quietly around her. Hours passed gently, the conversation filled with quiet gratitude, mutual respect, and the fragile beginnings of trust. Hannah knew her next step would be to seek proper medical care for Arthur, yet she hesitated to leave, comforted by the sense of connection and purpose she'd long yearned for. Finally, with gentle words and promises to return soon, Hannah rose, preparing to seek help. As she stepped outside into the cool air, Ranger stayed close at her side, and for the first time in years, Hannah felt the warmth of true belonging, certain she was no longer lost or forgotten. In the days following her discovery of Arthur, Hannah made the quiet farmhouse her second home, tirelessly applying the medical skills she had learned from years of military training to nurse him back to health. She patiently guided him through simple exercises, monitored his vital signs, and prepared nourishing meals, determined to restore both his physical strength and dignity. Arthur, though still frail, gradually showed signs of improvement under Hannah's gentle care, his pale complexion regaining a hint of color, and his once dimmed gray eyes brightening with cautious hope. Ranger, the steadfast German shepherd with thick black and tan fur and wise brown eyes, kept watch over Arthur like a guardian angel, resting close by his bedside and carefully observing every small movement. The dog's gentle yet protective nature provided Arthur with the comfort of companionship that words alone could never convey, while also reassuring Hannah that her newfound purpose was not in vain. As his health improved, Arthur began opening up, sharing the quiet, powerful stories of his past. Each evening, as twilight filled the humble farmhouse with gentle shadows, Hannah sat beside him, listening intently, allowing herself to become deeply absorbed in his poignant memories. He spoke of the vivid landscapes of Vietnam, the camaraderie among his fellow soldiers, and the heartache of loss that haunted him long after returning home. "I lost my best friend over there," Arthur revealed softly one evening, his voice quivering with lingering sorrow. "Tommy Evans. We grew up together, enlisted together, promised we'd both make it home." His hands trembled slightly as he held an old photograph of two young, smiling soldiers, their faces full of youthful confidence and dreams yet unrealized. Hannah felt a sharp pang of understanding resonate deep within her own heart, recalling the friends she too had lost and the heavy weight of promises broken by the cruelty of war. Arthur's stories gently awakened within her a profound empathy, helping her recognize that her own invisible wounds were no longer solitary burdens. They shared more than military service. They shared the quiet strength of survivors who had endured life's harshest lessons. Ranger sensed the emotional currents, swirling between Hannah and Arthur, responding with comforting gestures, soft whimpers, reassuring nudges, or simply resting his warm head upon their laps. The dog's intuitive actions bridged unspoken gaps, silently strengthening the connection between two souls trying to mend the fractures life had created. One afternoon, Hannah noticed Arthur looking thoughtfully out the window, eyes fixed upon the distant horizon, a peaceful yet distant expression crossing his features. "You know, Hannah," he finally said, "all these years I convinced myself that solitude was the only path to healing, yet loneliness only deepened my pain. It took meeting you and Ranger to remind me that real healing happens when we dare to reach out and accept help from others." His words stirred something deep within Hannah, bringing her own struggles into clearer focus. She had similarly withdrawn from the world, seeking isolation as protection from pain, unaware that true recovery lay not in running from hurt but confronting it alongside those who understood. Arthur's honesty touched her profoundly, prompting her to respond in kind. "I've been running too," Hannah admitted softly, meeting Arthur's compassionate gaze. "From memories, from grief, from the world itself. I thought I could heal alone, but Ranger found me, and he led me here, to you. I think he knew we needed each other, that neither of us was meant to fight these battles alone." A gentle silence filled the room, charged with shared understanding and newfound trust. Arthur reached out slowly, gently taking Hannah's hand in his own weathered grasp. The connection between them was tender yet strong. Two lives intertwined by fate and circumstance, supported by the unspoken loyalty and wisdom of a dog who had brought them together when they needed it most. As the evening light softened the edges of the farmhouse walls, Hannah felt a warmth blossoming in her chest, a sensation long forgotten, now revived by companionship and mutual empathy. Ranger raised his head, eyes glistening with quiet contentment, as if recognizing his role in forging the bond that had begun healing two broken lives. Together, Hannah, Arthur, and Ranger sat quietly, each heart slowly stitching together pieces they had once believed forever shattered, proving that even the deepest wounds could mend when shared with compassion and trust. As winter's grip slowly loosened over the Montana countryside, Hannah felt the heavy burdens within her heart begin to lighten as well, lifted gently by the companionship of Ranger and the quiet wisdom of Arthur. Each passing day, she confronted small yet significant milestones, rediscovering strength and courage through shared vulnerability. The German Shepherd, now nearly 2.5 years old, had become her constant shadow, his soft eyes filled with unwavering devotion and his calm presence, a balm to her still healing soul. Arthur's health steadily improved under Hannah's attentive care, but life held unpredictable twists. One bitterly cold evening, just as darkness swallowed the horizon, Arthur suddenly took a turn for the worse. Hannah was in the kitchen preparing tea when she heard Ranger's urgent barking from Arthur's room. Rushing inside, she found Arthur pale and gasping for breath, his eyes wide with panic as he struggled against the tightening grip of illness. "Hannah," he whispered weakly, fingers grasping for her hand, eyes pleading for help and reassurance. Her heart raced, anxiety flooding her senses, as vivid memories of her past medical emergencies flashed before her eyes, each scene filled with loss and helplessness. For a moment, the familiar paralysis of fear threatened to consume her again, but Ranger pressed close against her legs, his steady warmth grounding her trembling form. Summoning all her resolve, Hannah forced herself into action, recalling the critical medical procedures she'd mastered during her years in the Air Force. With practiced determination, she eased Arthur into a more comfortable position, swiftly retrieving her medical supplies, hands moving quickly, yet gently, as she administered oxygen from the portable tank she'd wisely acquired days before. Arthur's shallow breathing gradually eased, the desperate struggle replaced by quiet, labored breaths, his hand relaxing slightly in her own. Throughout this tense ordeal, Ranger remained steadfastly by Arthur's side, occasionally leaning his warm body gently against the elderly man's arm, providing silent comfort. Once Arthur stabilized, Hannah sank into a chair beside him, her pulse calming and tears quietly streaming down her pale cheeks, not from sadness, but relief. This had been her deepest fear, being unable to save someone she cared for deeply. Yet, she had faced it head-on and triumphed, buoyed by Ranger's unwavering support and Arthur's quiet faith in her abilities. In the quiet hours that followed, Arthur's breathing became steadier, his gaze clearer as he reached out, gently grasping Hannah's hand. "Thank you," he murmured softly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You saved me, not just tonight, but every day since you found me." Hannah met Arthur's grateful eyes, tears blurring her vision as she softly replied, "You saved me too, Arthur. Your trust and courage showed me how to face my fears again. Ranger brought me here, but your strength and kindness reminded me why life is worth fighting for." Arthur smiled warmly, his expression filled with quiet pride. "You've always had that strength, Hannah. You only needed to believe it yourself." As Arthur drifted into peaceful sleep, Hannah sat thoughtfully beside him, reflecting deeply upon his words. Ranger rested his head upon her lap, his breathing rhythmic and calming, providing silent companionship. For the first time since her return from military service, Hannah no longer felt trapped by her past. Arthur's belief in her had ignited a spark long extinguished within her heart, restoring the confidence she had lost amidst the scars of war. Looking down at Ranger, she gently stroked his soft fur, whispering gratefully, "You were right all along, boy. Together, we found our way back." The gentle German Shepherd gazed up at her, eyes full of understanding and affection, his tail wagging slightly in quiet acknowledgement. Hannah knew the journey ahead would still be challenging, but she no longer feared facing it. With Ranger and Arthur by her side, she had rediscovered a purpose greater than herself, a purpose rooted in compassion, resilience, and the profound strength found in healing together. Outside the farmhouse, dawn softly painted the horizon with delicate hues of gold and pink, signaling not only a new day but a hopeful beginning for 3 lives forever, bonded by courage, empathy, and an unbreakable bond of trust. Spring arrived gently in Montana, washing away the harsh remnants of winter with warm sunshine and fresh blooms. Arthur, now recovered and stronger with each passing day, spent peaceful afternoons sitting in his favorite chair on the farmhouse porch, watching the sun slowly dip beyond the distant hills. His silver hair and gentle, lined face were softened by newfound happiness, his once weary eyes now bright with the quiet joy of belonging. Beside him always sat Ranger, the young German shepherd whose thick, black and tan coat gleamed softly in the afternoon light. With each passing moment, Ranger grew more confident and loyal, a constant companion whose gentle and protective nature brought calm reassurance to both Hannah and Arthur. Hannah, having faced and conquered her deepest fears, no longer isolated herself from the world. Her chestnut hair shone vibrantly under the warm sunlight, and her thoughtful blue eyes now reflected clarity and purpose. Embracing her newfound strength, she began reaching out to other veterans living quietly in remote corners of their small community. Those who, like Arthur, had been left alone to face memories and hardships they seldom shared. With Ranger faithfully at her side, Hannah offered friendship, empathy, and support, drawing from the lessons she had learned through her own healing journey. In time, Arthur's humble farmhouse became a haven for veterans seeking companionship and understanding. On any given day, the old porch echoed with soft laughter, quiet conversations, and occasional stories of courage and sacrifice. Ranger, sensitive and intuitive, moved calmly among the visitors, offering his comforting presence, resting his gentle head upon a knee, or simply lying quietly at someone's feet. He became a beloved symbol of hope and unwavering loyalty, admired by all who met him and cherished by those who knew him well. One quiet evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of amber and violet, Arthur watched Hannah preparing dinner through the open kitchen window. He felt deeply grateful, recognizing in her the same spirit that had once driven him forward, the quiet determination, compassion, and resilience of a true soldier. Hannah caught his gaze and smiled warmly, the genuine affection in her eyes bringing comfort to his heart. "You know, Arthur," she said softly, stepping out onto the porch, placing her hand gently on his shoulder, "this place feels more like home every day. I never imagined finding this kind of peace again." Arthur patted her hand gently, a tender gesture of shared understanding. "It's your courage and kindness that transformed this old farmhouse into something meaningful. Ranger knew exactly where you were needed." At the mention of his name, Ranger lifted his head, ears perked attentively, eyes filled with quiet pride. Hannah knelt beside him, stroking his fur affectionately, whispering words of gratitude and love. Ranger's unwavering loyalty had sparked the rebirth of not just their lives, but the lives of others too, each day filled with renewed purpose, hope, and belonging. In the months and years that followed, the farmhouse became more than just a shelter. It became a sanctuary. Hannah dedicated herself fully to helping veterans find solace, ensuring no one felt forgotten or alone. Together, she and Arthur nurtured a community bonded by shared experience, compassion, and strength, proving healing could come from even the simplest acts of kindness. Ranger, now nearly 3 years old, continued his gentle guardianship, watching over those he had quietly united. His loyalty and love inspired everyone around him, a constant reminder of the healing power that animals could offer to wounded souls. The once lonely farmhouse was now filled with warmth, laughter, and quiet gratitude, a place where each broken heart slowly mended, embraced by understanding and friendship. One clear summer evening, as fireflies gently illuminated the meadow surrounding the farmhouse, Hannah sat peacefully beside Arthur, her gaze following Ranger as he playfully chased the twinkling lights. Arthur reached out gently, grasping Hannah's hand in quiet appreciation. "You gave us all a second chance, Hannah." She shook her head softly, eyes glistening with gentle tears. "No, Arthur, we gave each other that chance, together. Ranger brought us here, but it was the courage we found within ourselves that truly healed us." Ranger trotted back toward them, his expression joyful, tongue lolling happily. As he settled beside their feet, Hannah felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that together they had built something beautiful from the ashes of past pain. Surrounded by love, companionship, and understanding, their once lonely lives had been reborn, forever connected by an unbreakable bond of friendship, courage, and hope. Sometimes, healing comes in the quiet loyalty of a friend who never leaves your side, reminding us that love and sacrifice are the deepest bonds we share. As Hannah learned through Ranger's gentle guidance, hope often emerges from unexpected places, and kindness always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, please join our journey by subscribing, so together we can continue to share more stories of courage, compassion, and unconditional love.